Get your hands off my chair. That was the first thing I shouted when I saw him, a shirtless guy sitting on my porch swing, sipping iced tea like he'd just clocked out from paradise. He didn't even flinch, just leaned back, one arm over the swing, smirk plastered across his tanned face. "Excuse me?" he said, lazily. "You must be the neighbor. Karen said you might drop by. My boots hit the steps hard." "Neighbor, this is my cabin." He laughed, actually laughed, and said, "Not anymore, old man. Paperwork signed. HOA reassigned it." "Reassigned?" I repeated, heart pounding. "By who? By the president herself." He tilted his head, smug as hell. "My mom. It hit like thunder. Karen Dwyer." The same HOA president who once fined a fisherman for leaving a tackle box on his own dock. I clenched my jaw. "So let me get this straight. Travis, your mother gave you my cabin?" He shrugged. "She said it was abandoned. I just moved in. You should take it up with her." "I will." I stepped closer, toe to toe. "But first, you're going to get off my porch." He rose slow, close enough for me to smell his cologne. "Or what?" I smiled, quiet and steady. "Or you'll find out what it feels like to get fenced out of your own lie." Before he could answer, the crunch of tires on gravel echoed behind us. A silver SUV rolled up, window sliding down. And there she was, Karen Dwyer herself, perfect hair, white blazer, phone in hand like a badge of authority. "Mark Palmer," she said sweetly, voice dripping poison. "You're trespassing." "I'm what?" I snapped. "This is my land, not according to the HOA registry," she said, stepping out with a clipboard. "Your property was declared unmaintained and reassigned for community use. My son now holds temporary residency." "You forged that." She raised a brow. "Big words for someone who hasn't paid his association fees in 6 months. "I don't pay thieves," I shot back, "and I don't answer to dictators in blazers." Karen's lips curved into that plastic smile. "You'll regret this attitude, Mark." I stared her down. "No, Karen, you'll regret underestimating me." For 10 long seconds, no one moved. Then she scoffed, waved at Travis to follow, and climbed back into her SUV. Gravel sprayed as she sped off down the road, leaving silence and fury behind. By the time dusk fell, I was still standing there on that porch, looking at the swing my grandfather built. Every nail, every chain, every creak of it had a story, and now someone else's son had left fingerprints all over it. That wasn't arrogance anymore. That was war. I drove straight to town. Bought every length of black steel fencing the hardware store had in stock. The owner looked confused. "You starting a prison, Mark?" he joked. "Something like that," I said flatly. 3 hours later, headlights lit my property like a construction site. I had 2 workers, a generator, and 1 mission. I unrolled the blueprint I'd drawn years ago and started digging post holes deep, precise, deliberate. If they wanted to erase my boundaries on paper, I'd carve new ones into the earth. By midnight, the first panels were up tall, dark, and beautiful. A wall of truth made of steel. When the auger hit rock, sparks flew. I smiled. My father used to say, "If you hit resistance, you're digging in the right place." At sunrise, Karen came flying down the dirt road, red-faced and shrieking before she even got out of her SUV. "Mark Palmer, what in God's name do you think you're doing?" "Setting boundaries," I said, voice calm. "Something you seem to have trouble with." She stomped closer, heels sinking into mud. "You can't fence the HOA office. It's shared property." I unrolled a document and held it out. "County verified survey. That building sits 2 feet over my boundary line. Congratulations, you've been trespassing for years." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Behind her, a few board members peeked from the window blinds. I waved. Then the post driver slammed another iron rod into the ground, rattling the entire wall of her precious office. Karen gasped as one of her tulip beds split in 2. "Cease construction immediately," she barked. "File it in triplicate," I said. "Maybe your son can notarize it." She looked ready to explode. "You'll regret this, Mr. Palmer." I tipped my hat. "That's what the last guy who stole my tools said." Karen stormed off, tires spitting gravel, but I didn't celebrate. I just stood there, hands dirty, heart steady, staring at the fence. It wasn't vengeance, it was a message. You can't steal from a man who built his home with his own hands. Let me take you back before all this. I'm Mark Palmer, 55, retired forester. My dad bought this cabin in 1982 with sawmill savings and a promise that one day it would be mine. It's not big, but every inch has a memory from the carvings on the door to the pine trees I planted when I was 12. 2 years ago, the HOA formed around the lake. They called it Lakeview Community Enhancement. Sounded harmless. They said it was about beautification and property value. I signed the first document without thinking much of it. That was my mistake. Karen started small. Letters about approved mailbox sizes, quiet hours, and visual compliance. Then came fines, $50 for a wind chime, $100 for parking my truck incorrectly in my own driveway. Most neighbors paid and moved on. Me? I waved at her every morning, smiled, and kept notes. My dad always said, never argue with someone holding a pen. Outthink them instead. Last fall, I left for Oregon to care for my sister after surgery. 6 months gone. Before I left, I paid my taxes, locked every door, left the cabin in perfect shape, asked my old friend Joe to check in once a week. When I came back, Joe met me at the gas station, scratching his beard. "Mark, something's off at your place." "What kind of off?" "I saw a young guy hauling in furniture. Thought maybe you sold it." "Never," I said. And that's how I ended up facing Travis on my porch, and his mother pretending the world belonged to her clipboard. By the time the fence reached its final post, I wasn't just protecting property. I was protecting history. My dad's sweat, my mom's laughter, the marks of every hammer strike, they were all buried in this soil. But the war was far from over. Because the next night, as the crew packed up and the generator went silent, a black SUV rolled back into the drive. A man stepped out, suit, sunglasses, clipboard. "You Mark Palmer?" "That's me. I'm here to serve you a cease and desist from the HOA board." Before I could answer, Travis appeared on the porch again, shouting, "You can't take this place from me! My mom promised me!" The suited man blinked, startled. The neighbors watching from across the road heard every word. That was his mistake, his confession, the thing that turned a boundary dispute into a legal earthquake. I didn't shout. I didn't argue. I just looked him dead in the eyes and said quietly, "Thanks for saying that out loud." Then I turned, got in my truck, and drove off, calm, collected, and smiling for the first time in months. Because when a bully admits the truth in front of witnesses, the rest is just paperwork. I hadn't slept. I just sat in the truck all night, engine off, watching the lake steam under the sunrise. Every creak of the fence felt like a heartbeat. When you've been wronged that deeply, silence becomes its own weapon. Then came the pounding, not gentle, angry, impatient, fists on metal. I stepped out, mug of coffee in hand, and found 3 HOA board members in matching polos standing at my gate like mall cops on a power trip. "Mr. Palmer," one barked. "You're in violation of obstruction, code 4B, subsection 12. I squinted. "That fence is on my land." "Not anymore," another snapped, waving a manila folder. President Dwyer redrew the property lines. I smiled. Then she must have used a crayon. Their jaws tightened. One leaned in closer. "You'll need to remove this barrier immediately or face legal action." "Go ahead," I said. "Courts open Mondays." The youngest one glared. "You think this is funny?" "I think it's educational." They left in a storm of clipboards and exhaust fumes. I watched them drive away, took one long sip of coffee and whispered, "Class dismissed." But beneath the calm, I knew it was only beginning. By noon, I was at Rick's law office downtown, old friend, sharp as a saw blade, and the only lawyer who still wore boots instead of loafers. He glanced over the fake deed they'd filed. "You were right," he said, tapping his pen. "They forged your signature. Sloppy, but enough to cause a mess. My stomach turned. How bad? Bad for them, he said. Real bad. This isn't a civil matter anymore. It's fraud. He handed me photocopies of the fake transfer papers. My name, my writing but wrong. The loops in the letters were off. The date mismatched the county record. They underestimated you, Rick said. You still want to fight? I looked out the window, saw the lake shimmering in the distance. No, I said. I want to win. That evening, as the sun sank behind the ridge, I returned home to find the cabin door ajar. My stomach dropped. Inside, drawers were yanked open, chairs overturned. The pantry my father had built by hand stood scarred, 5 words carved into its wooden face. Get out, or else. I stood there, motionless. Dust hung in the air like smoke. Every instinct screamed to rage, but something deeper took over a colder part of me that had learned long ago, never give your enemy your anger. I traced the carving with my fingers, the letters deep, jagged. Then I opened the window and let the night air in. All right, I muttered. You've made it personal. The next morning, I didn't call Karen. I called the sheriff. Sheriff Donnelly, old high school buddy turned lawman, met me at his desk. You're saying someone broke in and vandalized your home? Not just broke in, I said, handing him the forged papers. They forged ownership. Then they came back to scare me off. He frowned, scanning the documents. Karen Dwyer again? Who else? He sighed, rubbing his temple. We've had other reports. Mailboxes smashed, threats left on doorsteps, always the same crowd folks who pushed back against HOA rules. So she's building an army? More like digging her own grave, he said. Give me a few days. I'll see what I can pull up. As I stood to leave, he reached into a drawer and slid over a small flash drive. This was found in Travis's car last night, he said quietly. We couldn't open it without a warrant, but you're not law enforcement. I looked down. The label, scrawled in Sharpie, read, HOA Karen 2021. Back at the cabin, I locked the door, pulled the blinds, and plugged it into my old laptop. The screen blinked. Then came a flood of files. PDFs, scan checks, receipts, all with one name recurring again and again, Karen Dwyer. Payments to fake companies, money transferred from HOA funds to personal accounts. One entry read, Lakeview Legal Consultants, but the address was a tanning salon. I leaned back, heart pounding. Fraud, theft, laundering, she'd built an empire out of manipulation. But I didn't call the sheriff, not yet. I had a better idea. The following Saturday, I hosted a community potluck. No agenda, no permits, just food and truth. Word spread fast. By evening, more than 60 people had gathered by the lake, kids chasing fireflies, men grilling burgers, neighbors laughing for the first time in months. Then I stepped up to the picnic table and raised a folder. Neighbors, I began, I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but there's something you all deserve to see. Karen appeared in the crowd's edge like a hawk spotting movement. Don't you dare, she started, but I didn't stop. These are financial records, I said. Proof that your HOA dues have been stolen and funneled into fake businesses. Your money, your names. Gasps. Whispers. Faces shifted from confusion to fury. Karen tried to shout, Lies! All lies! But I kept speaking calm, measured, every word a hammer. I didn't make these. Your president's son left them behind. The crowd turned. People murmured. Someone shouted, She fined me for leaving my trash can out. Another, She charged me for repairs that never happened. The anger swelled like a wave. Karen backed away, her voice cracking. You can't prove. Oh, I can, I said. And I just did. The crowd parted. Karen turned and bolted, sprinting for the HOA office, locking herself inside. The murmurs became chants. Vote her out. Vote her out. And for the first time in years, that lake felt alive again. But I knew Karen wasn't done. That night, while I stood by the dock, watching moonlight ripple across the water, an orange glow caught my eye reflection, distant but growing. I turned. Flames. The boathouse, my father's boathouse, was on fire. I ran. Buckets, hose, shouting. Neighbors rushed to help, but the dry wood caught like tinder. By the time the fire crew arrived, it was gone nothing but blackened beams and ashes floating on the lake. One firefighter walked up, holding something half melted. It was a picture frame. The photo, inside my dad, holding me on his shoulders, smiling in front of that same dock, burned to ash. I dropped to my knees. The world blurred. Karen hadn't just tried to steal property. She'd burned memory. By dawn, the smoke had cleared, but the rage hadn't. I stood at the water's edge, ashes swirling around my boots. The smell of wet char hung in the air. "You went too far," I whispered. Then I called Rick. "She burned it," I said flatly. He was silent for a moment. Then we moved to criminal charges. "Do it. Next?" I called Travis. He answered on the second ring, voice raw. "Mark?" "Aye. She burned my boathouse," I said. "You still want to make this right?" He hesitated. "I'll meet you at the sheriff's office." When I arrived, Travis was already there, sober, pale, shaking. Sheriff Donnelly switched on the recorder. "State your name for the record," he said. "Travis Dwyer," he replied quietly. "And why are you here?" "Because my mom lied," Travis said, eyes glassy. "She told me the cabin was abandoned. Said she could sign it over. I didn't know it was fake. But I do now." He glanced at me. "I'll testify. Whatever it takes." The sheriff nodded. "This changes everything." Travis leaned forward. "She told people to make it hard for him to stay. She didn't say burn it, but she knew someone might." I looked at him, the same man I'd wanted to throw off my porch just days ago, and for the first time, I saw regret instead of arrogance. "Then let's end this," I said. By the time I left the sheriff's office, the sun was setting behind the ridges, painting the lake gold. The fight wasn't over, but something in me had shifted. I'd stopped being a victim the moment I built that fence. Now, I was building something else, a reckoning. Because when you stand up to people who think rules make them gods, you remind them of something they forgot. Real ownership isn't in a deed, it's in what you're willing to defend. The morning after Travis's confession, the air over Lakeview felt charged like the pause before a thunderstorm. Word travels fast in small towns. By sunrise, everyone knew the sheriff had taken Travis's statement. By noon, whispers turned into headlines. HOA president under investigation. Karen's kingdom was cracking, and she felt it. I saw her the next day in town, standing outside the coffee shop, phone glued to her ear, pacing. When her eyes met mine through the window, something flickered. Not power this time, but panic. She turned away quickly, got in her SUV, and drove off without paying for her drink. Rick called me that afternoon. "It's official," he said. "The county attorney's opening a case. Fraud, forgery, and possible arson." I exhaled. About time. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "She's got connections, and when people like her get cornered, they don't surrender. They burn the map." He wasn't wrong. 2 nights later, I woke to the crunch of footsteps outside my window. Not animals, boots. Slow, deliberate. I reached for the flashlight and stepped quietly to the door. The sound stopped. The night was dead silent. I flipped the porch light on nothing. Just my fence glinting under the moon. Then I saw it, nailed to one of the posts. A dead squirrel with a note pinned to its chest. "Old dogs don't belong here." I didn't flinch. I took a photo, removed it carefully, and buried it by the dock. Fear only works if you feed it. Later that week, while walking past the HOA building, I noticed something strange. The back shed, usually locked, was open. Papers fluttered in the breeze. No guards, no cameras. I walked closer, heart pounding. Inside were boxes of records, invoices, contracts, tax receipts. I snapped photos of everything. Gas bills addressed to non-existent residents. Reimbursements signed by Karen twice, once as president, once as project manager. Then I saw a file labeled Expansion Plan Phase 3. Inside, Detailed blueprints marking more lakefront properties, cabins, cottages, boathouses, all tagged non-compliant or under reassignment review. They were planning to take the entire lake. I backed out, shaking, phone full of photos. For the first time, I realized this wasn't about me. I was just the test subject. The beginning. That night, I sent everything to Rick and Sheriff Donnelly. Rick called within minutes. "Mark, this isn't just HOA level fraud. These contracts tie back to a developer in Billings. Big money. Someone's funding her. So she's not the queen," I said. "Just a pawn." "Exactly. We went to the press." Local Channel 8 aired the story first. Lakeview HOA scandal, alleged forgery, and arson under investigation. They blurred Karen's face, but everyone in town knew who she was. The footage showed the burned boathouse, the forged deeds, and the clip of Travis saying, "She lied to me." By morning, the town council called an emergency meeting. The hall was packed. Neighbors stood shoulder to shoulder, voices rising. Karen sat at the front, sunglasses on indoors, jaw tight. Council Chairwoman Linda Groves cleared her throat. "Mrs. Dwyer, several residents have submitted evidence of fraud." "Lies," Karen hissed. "All of it." "Then why?" Linda continued. "Does the sheriff's office confirm your HOA accounts show payments to fake vendors?" Karen slammed her fist on the table. "You can't prove I signed them." I stood in the back, arms crossed. "Actually," I said, voice calm, "you already did." She turned. I held up a photo from my phone, one she'd taken herself months ago, posing proudly in front of the new HOA office sign. The check she held in the picture matched one of the forged payments. The crowd gasped. Karen's face went white. The room erupted. "Step down!" someone shouted. "Resign!" But Karen didn't move. She stormed out, shoving past reporters, yelling, "This isn't over!" She was right about that. It wasn't. 3 nights later, I heard the metallic screech of metal tearing. I ran outside. My fence was being cut down. By the time I reached it, the culprits were gone. Iron slats lay scattered across the dirt like broken bones. And pinned to my cabin door, still vibrating from the impact of a hunting knife, was a note. "Back off. This is your last warning." I pulled the knife out slowly, the blade cold against my palm. Then I smiled, not from humor, but from understanding. If someone threatens you that boldly, it means they're afraid. I placed the knife on my table, opened my laptop, and uploaded everything: the photos, the files, the audio from Travis's testimony, to 3 encrypted cloud folders. 1 went to Rick, 1 to the sheriff, and 1 to an old friend. Her name was Janet McBride, investigative journalist and my late wife's best friend. She picked up my call on the first ring. "I saw the news, Mark," she said. "Didn't expect to see your name in it." "I've got something big," I said, "and it's deeper than Karen." "I believe you," she replied. "Send everything." 10 minutes later, she called back, voice low and serious. "Mark, this isn't just HOA corruption. This is state level. These shell companies, I've traced them to a developer who's bought out half of western Montana's lakeside properties. They call it Golden Pine Developments." I froze. "You're saying Karen's working for them?" "She was," Janet said, "whether she knows it or not." We met the next day by the old marina, pretending it was just a friendly walk. Janet wore her old brown leather jacket, a reporter's notebook in one hand, camera in the other. "I'm going live in 48 hours, she said. "But you need to be careful. People tied to these deals don't play fair." That night, I packed what I needed and left the cabin, dark lights on timers, truck parked in the driveway, everything to make it look like I was home. Then I stayed with Joe down the road. At 1:42 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion alert from the cabin camera. 2 hooded figures. One carried a crowbar, the other a gas can. Joe and I watched in silence from his attic, eyes glued to the screen. "They're gonna torch it," Joe whispered. "Not tonight," I replied, dialing the sheriff.
"I've got it covered."
5 minutes later, floodlights exploded across the yard. Patrol cars screeched into the driveway, sirens wailing. The intruders froze. Officers shouted commands. Within seconds, both men were face down, cuffed. One of them was Karen's boyfriend. The other, a contractor whose name appeared on 4 fake invoices labeled Emergency Landscaping. The sheriff looked directly into the porch camera and gave me a thumbs up. I exhaled. Finally. Maybe, just maybe, it was over. But when I returned to the cabin the next morning, something felt off. Nothing was broken, nothing stolen. But the knife that had been pinned to my door, the one I'd placed on the counter, was gone. That's when the paranoia hit. I started searching. Every vent, every floorboard, every corner of the pantry wall my father built decades ago, and that's when I found it. Behind the old closet panel, a loose board. I pried it open and pulled out a dusty folder. Inside, more documents, blueprints, lists, names. 3 more lake properties marked confiscate. Fake HOA fines under the names of widows who died years ago. And at the bottom, a typed list of people, all with check marks beside them. Local officials, accountants, a retired judge. It wasn't just Karen. It was a ring. I handed everything to Janet that afternoon. She flipped through the folder, eyes wide. "This blows it wide open," she whispered. "Not just a county scandal, this is statewide." I looked at the lake, still and gray. I just wanted to fish on weekends. She smiled sadly. Sometimes life hands the quiet man the loudest fight. 2 days later, she aired the story. Not just local, national. The headline read, "Montana Lake HOA Corruption Ring Exposed, Stolen Homes, Forged Deeds, and a Retiree Who Fought Back." The video showed everything. The fire, the fence, the arrests. Karen's voice shrieking, "This is harassment," played right before Travis's calm statement. She lied to me. She lied to everyone. By sunset, the HOA board had resigned. By midnight, Karen Dwyer was in custody. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was quiet. Not peace, not yet, just quiet. The kind that comes after a storm when you're still checking if the house is standing. Then, the next morning, a black SUV rolled into town. 2 men in suits. One pinned a new notice on the HOA office door. Temporary management appointed by state receiver. Property under review. A chill ran through me. We'd taken down one empire, but another had just moved in. The notice on the HOA office door hung like a warning bell. Temporary management appointed by state receiver. Most people thought it meant safety, oversight, cleanup, a new beginning. But to me, it smelled like another kind of control. The next day, the man behind it arrived. Black SUV, black suit, black briefcase. He stepped out like he owned the road. Tall, sharp, mid-50s, eyes that measured everything and revealed nothing. "Good morning," he said to the small crowd that had gathered. "My name is Jonathan Holt. I've been appointed by the state to oversee Lakeview's transition." His tone was polite, but sterile, the kind that doesn't invite questions. He shook no hands, just surveyed the lake, the people, the office, like a hawk mapping its territory. I stood near the fence, arms crossed. "Cleanup crew or takeover team," I muttered under my breath. He heard me. His eyes flicked my way. "Both," he said. That afternoon, Holt held his first public address in the community center. Every seat was filled, folks who'd just watched Karen's empire collapse, now hoping for a savior. Holt stood behind the podium, papers perfectly squared. "There has been a severe breakdown in fiduciary trust here," he began. "From this day forward, all HOA operations are frozen pending audit. No fines, no transfers, no construction." People applauded. I didn't. Then he said something that made my stomach twist. "We will also be reviewing all prior property disputes from the last 3 years, including those settled by court order." I raised my hand. "So my cabin goes under review again?" Holt nodded smoothly. "Every case must be revalidated to ensure no procedural bias or bribery influence the outcome. I stood up. You have certified deeds, signed by a judge, notarized twice, and affirmed by the county.
You're finished here.
What more do you need? He smiled faintly. Compliance, Mr. Palmer. I'm sure a man like you understands rules. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Some clapped, others frowned, but I saw it the same arrogance I'd seen in Karen, polished and wearing a state badge. That night, I called Janet. This Holt guy isn't here to fix anything, I said. Then what's he doing? Buying time, I replied, for someone bigger. She promised to dig into his background. Meanwhile, I started digging myself. I spent the next 2 days researching public records, corporate filings, old property transfers. And then I found it buried in a list of contractors from Golden Pine Development's consultant, Jonathan R. Holt, the same man now claiming to be the state receiver. He'd been on their payroll less than a year ago. I printed every page, every signature, and drove straight to Rick's office. Rick looked over the file, expression grim. If this is true, they've just replaced one corrupt boss with another. Not replaced, I said. Rebranded. Rick nodded slowly. So, what's the plan? Same as before, I said. We build fences. But this time, it wasn't metaphorical. By dawn, a familiar flatbed truck rumbled up my driveway, same crew that helped me erect the first steel wall months ago. Morning, Mark, the foreman said. Heard you've got another project? Yeah, I said. Same layout, bigger perimeter. He raised a brow. You're serious? Dead serious. We gotta work. The sound of drills and drivers echoed across the lake. Sparks flew as metal posts bit into the soil. The line ran wide, not just around my cabin, but all the way down to the road, enclosing the HOA building itself. By noon, half the town had gathered to watch. Someone asked, Mark, you building a prison? Maybe, I said. Depends who ends up inside. Right on cue, Holt's SUV screeched up, tires spitting gravel. He jumped out, face red. Mr. Palmer, he shouted, cease construction immediately. I didn't stop. The auger kept drilling. He stormed up to the gate. This is state property under investigation. I handed him a printed copy of my deed and court ruling. That building sits within my father's original parcel. You're standing on private land. He blinked. You can't be serious. Very, I said, smiling. By 3 p.m., the final section of fence clicked shut. The HOA building, or what was left of it, now sat fully enclosed. The gate locked from my side. Holt's shiny black SUV was parked inside. He pounded the gate with his fists. This is obstruction of state operations. No, I said calmly. This is the lawful use of private property. He shouted again, demanding I unlock it. I leaned on the post. You said everything needed review, right? Consider this your on-site audit. The crowd behind me laughed. Phones came up, cameras rolled. A few kids started chanting, Fence him in! Fence him in! Holt turned red, yanking the gate until his knuckles bled. I didn't move, just watched as a man who thought he was untouchable realized he'd stepped into the same trap his predecessors built. By evening, the footage hit local news. Retired forester fences in state receiver amid ongoing HOA scandal. The video showed Holt trapped behind the gate, shouting legal threats while townsfolk cheered. The anchor called it the most Montana standoff of the year. But I wasn't doing it for spectacle, I was doing it for proof. That night, Janet called again. Mark, are you sitting down? Should I be? She exhaled. I found Holt's emails. Leaked from Golden Pine's internal system. 6 months ago, they thanked him for clearing the path for future development rights in Lakeview and offered him a 6-figure consulting bonus. I grinned. You just handed me the last nail. The next morning, the governor's office issued a suspension order. By noon, state police escorted Holt out of the fenced property, handcuffed, silent, no press statement. The gate opened once, then locked again behind him, this time for good. The crowd that gathered didn't cheer. They just stood quietly, watching the man who tried to play God walk out like a fallen priest. Rick clapped me on the shoulder. You just outplayed the state, Mark. I shook my head. No, I just reminded them whose land this is. 3 weeks later, the official report came out. Dissolved Golden Pine Developments under federal investigation. Awaiting trial. Disbarred and facing fraud charges. The county appointed a temporary community council, volunteers, homeowners, retirees. No titles, no presidents, no power trips. They asked me to serve as chair. I said yes, but only under one rule. No one person makes the rules again. We all do. We rewrote the charter line by line. No fines, no secret votes. No intimidation. The old HOA office became a community library and youth center. The first thing we hung on its wall wasn't a mission statement. It was the original deed, framed, signed, and stamped with the words, "Property restored." One crisp Saturday morning, as fog drifted off the lake, I built something new. Not a fence this time, but a porch swing. Same design as the one my grandfather made decades ago. As I drilled the final bolt, I heard footsteps. Travis stood at the gate, hands in his pockets, eyes lowered. "Didn't think you'd want to see me again," he said quietly. "Depends what you're here for," I replied. He pulled out an envelope. "My mom's gone, sold her house, left the state. I just wanted to apologize." I took the envelope. Inside was a check for $1,000 and a note. For the tree I cut without asking. For the porch I sat on without knowing. For the damage I didn't cause but didn't stop. I folded it back and handed it to him. "I'm not cashing this," he frowned. "Why not?" "Because some debts aren't paid with money." He nodded, tears glinting in his eyes. "Thank you." When he left, I hung the new swing on the porch and sat for a long while, watching the sun shimmer across the water. The air smelled like pine and fresh steel. The world was quiet again, but this time it was peace, not silence. I thought about everything that had happened, the fence, the fire, the lies, the fight. And I realized something simple. You can be kind and still fight back. You can build fences that protect not just land, but dignity. Sometimes you don't fight with fists. Sometimes you fight with patience, proof, and the sound of a hammer driving truth into the ground. That land was my father's, my family's, my history, and now it was mine again, forever.